And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is David Benjamin, and if you were to ask David what makes him tick, he would take the clock apart and show you how each little piece works. He's coming from a math and a computer science background. He's the co-founder of a firm called Syntegrity up in Toronto, and is the chief architect behind his implementation and complexity formula. Syntegrity and David advise Fortune 500 and government leaders on how to organize for complexity. He is also the author of a book that will be coming out in the spring of 2019 called Cracking Complexity with his partner, David Komlos. So, David, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Peter.
Great. So this whole world of authorship and thought leadership and all that stuff is fairly new to you.
Yeah, this will be my first book. And I've been sort of casually and informally writing basically all my life. I'm a big reader.
Yep.
I think I'm pretty good at writing, and I've been flexing those muscles for a few years on social media. But first book.
So, given that you are, your organization is a consultancy that works primarily with Fortune 500, large government agencies, et cetera, you had to make some decisions around why to go down this path, how to go down this path, whom to go down this path with, things to do and not do. Could you share a little bit of the journey and the decision making process and some of the decisions you've made?
Yeah, my co-author David Komlos and I have wanted to write a book probably for the last 12 years. Because what we've been doing as we bring our particular service to market is needing to create a market. People don't necessarily know that they need what we do, which is a different approach to solving complex challenges. So we've always known and we've always had our eye on the task of getting something written that would kind of blaze the trail for what we do. And the bigger challenge is kind of what you alluded to, which is we deliver a particular kind of IP and we have very confidential relationships with our clients as we help them solve some of their biggest challenges. So, figuring out how to write a book with stories that are meaningful, with descriptions of the how, not just the what, and do that without in any way jeopardizing the business we do. That was the bigger challenge than deciding we wanted to do it.
Got it. So let me ask you a question, and I want to get back to that. Is this concept of creating a market, right? So oftentimes someone is going down the path of authorship or thought leadership because they're in a space where it's almost a requirement, right? I'm in the leadership space, or I'm in the sales training space or management development space or whatever. And I look around and I say, oh, geez, everybody in the leadership space has a book. I guess I might as well have a book, etc. Describe for me a little bit about this creating a market, because you do some amazing work, yet the new clients looking for the solutions like you have aren't necessarily looking for them. They don't know that you exist and this methodology and framework and such that you've been using for a long, long time works exists. So how do you blend that into the mix?
Well, I would say, first of all, that it's not so much that our customers don't know that they need to solve a particular challenge they have. That's usually what's keeping them up at night. They're dealing with something massively complex or just something that is foundational to the business. And they would know, from past experiences that the way you handle that is to bring that to a traditional management consultant or you strike a task force, et cetera. What we need to do and what we've needed to do is to get to those people and let them know that they have an alternative,
Yep.
that rather than believing that they do not have the talent or knowledge or know how kind of in and around their organization, they can access that talent that they do have and do a more effective and faster job actually of finding solutions that will come with execution. So we needed to let them know that there's an alternative, that there's a different way of approaching these kinds of challenges. So again, book and speaking and everything else we're going to do is about letting them know that.
Right. So they know they have a problem they need to solve, but they would typically default to going to the standard tools. And what you need to show them is shine the light on, hey, there's a new tool over here that you might not know about, but it does exactly what you're looking for. So let's go back to some of the decisions that you've had to make, because I think a lot of people can learn from your journey. So you've been thinking about writing a book for 12 years, then you decide now's the time. And again, the book's not even out till May, so it's done. It's just in that sort of pre-stage now. What's been surprising to you in terms of all the decisions that you've had to make and things you've had to think about?
I think probably foremost is just how easy it was. To some degree, we feel like a garage band, right? Or a band that suddenly becomes very popular. They've been working clubs and everything else for 15 years, and their overnight successes in the view of the market when they suddenly get their big break. In the same way, we've been doing what we do for 17 years now.
Yep.
We've been delivering consistently excellent work. And when it came time to sort of deconstruct what we do and tell a story to people about how to do that themselves, which is part of what we're doing as well, it was surprisingly easy to do it because we had been writing the book really for the last 17 years.
Right. So it was just sort of a forcing mechanism to get you to put it on paper in a way that is digestible, what you knew how to do and you know how to operate.
Right. And so, what else has been very surprising is the value of having to write it down and write it down in a way that other people can understand it and implement it themselves. Because that brought us to all sorts of minor breakthroughs in terms of how we express different components of what we do, how we describe why it works, how we explain, what it takes to run one of these things or to lead one of these things. Again, just the exercise of having to deconstruct what we know so well into something that other people can read just brought us all sorts of breakthroughs. I'd say that in the last 18 months or 12 months since we started writing, we've had more breakthroughs sort of per week than we had in the previous 15 years of business.
And the book, it sounds like to some degree, was sort of the forcing mechanism because books have deadlines and you have editors that you're responsible for deliverables and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and again, just you sort of characterized it as a decision, deciding that we were going to be very transparent about what we do and how it works, and then having to explain it. Were sort of two different pain points.
Okay.
First, you have to take the leap that it's okay to let the market know how you do what you do, and that if you've been doing it longer and if you do it better, you've always got that advantage.
Well, so let's talk about that because I think that's an issue that people struggle with. Where, for example, the Seven Habits, Covey's book that's 30 years old. It's not. The book doesn't say I'm only going to tell you three, and then you have to send me some money and I'll give you the other four. But there's almost a natural inclination to say, oh my God, if I put it all out there, they won't need me anymore, right? So tell me how you sort of manage that thinking and that.
I think we were definitely handcuffed by a fear of saying too much until it became clear to us that, first of all, complexity as a thematic area and as something that people needed to pay attention to, as it really became mainstream, we realized just how much we had to say. As we got better and better at what we did over the years, and as we took on very high end clients for big tasks and delivered work that effectively sold the next tranche of work we would do with them, we became more and more comfortable that it wasn't so much the what or the how in terms of the mechanics of doing what we do, but our skill, our experience, our portfolio of stories that was the real differentiator for us. So once we knew that, it became okay. So let's tell the story.
Yes.
Let's throw open the market. Let's invite competitors in because we're ready.
Even though someone might be able to read the book and hang a shingle out there somewhere and say, "Oh, I can do what those guys do for cheaper." The fact that you've got the pedigree, the fact that you've got the long list of clients that you've worked with, the fact that you've created this process should give you enough of a moat to protect what you have, obviously.
That's right, and of course there are still bits of IP
Sure.
that get at how we implement some of the steps we're talking about, which are hard for someone to do without help, whether it's us or someone else.
So let's get into some of the block and tackle decisions, right? So until you go down this path of authorship, I would argue you probably didn't never hired a social media firm or a PR firm or whatever. How did you go down that road?
We immediately did what we ask our clients to do, which is recognize that we're in over our head and we don't know how to do this particular task, and we reached out for help from the experts. So we started with I'm trying to remember. I think it was Gotham Ghostwriters in New York who found us a writing partner, somebody who had written many books before and could tell us what needed to be done. And of course, the first thing he told us needed to be done was writing a proposal. So we wrote a proposal, and we sort of followed this step by step, but guided by somebody who'd been there before.
Right. So Dan and Gotham are really deep experts in not only writing books, but the whole process of writing a book. And one path is to get it published from a big house. What are the sort of the standards and the protocol and the processes? Because you probably wouldn't have come up on your own, write a proposal that looks like this, right?
Exactly. This wasn't something we wanted to fail at or waste too much time on. And I remember saying to somebody very early on, I felt like, again, I'm from Canada, so it's going to be a hockey analogy. I felt like a hockey player, on the bench, just waiting to jump onto the ice surface and start playing because, I knew that we were about to do great stuff and that we had a great story to tell. But to get there, you have to actually, send out a proposal, get into negotiations, and so on and so forth before you even know what book you're writing and what book you've sold.
Got it. So you work a little bit with Gotham. They help you. They find you a ghostwriter. Talk about the ghostwriting process, because the term ghostwriter, I think people throw about as if it has one meaning, but there's actually a continuum of what that could mean. So how did you find, given that you've got the added complexity of writing with a partner, right? It's not just your perspective, but how do you find a ghostwriter that you are happy with?
We were looking for somebody who would play the role we were looking for them to play. So I'm not sure, in the traditional sense, how much a ghostwriter actually writes. David and I knew that we had the story to tell and that we would have to do a large amount of the writing. But what we wanted is somebody who could help us vet what we're writing, tell us whether it's written in a way that people can understand. We had him write particular small bits that we either didn't feel like writing or didn't know how to write, and then edited what he did. So it really became three of us working together, David and David doing the heavy lifting, the ghostwriter helping where he could and when he could, and just being an extra pair of hands for us. The bigger question was about writing the book with my partner and how we sort of stayed out of each other's way and found the story together, which is probably harder than writing a book on your own, I'm guessing.
Yes, and the only thing harder is when there's three co-authors. No editor likes to see that because it's exponentially harder. Okay, so that's the ghostwriting process, and now sort of take us through, what you learned there. Okay, so you've got a book, you were able to pitch it, you got a great publisher, advance all the mechanics, all that sort of stuff, and now obviously you learn that you don't just sit back and the publisher makes rainbows and unicorns appear.
Right. Are you saying you need to write a book
No,
first?
no, no. What I'm saying is the next step in the process. So now you learn sort of not just how to write a book, but the proposal world, et cetera. What I'm saying is sort of, if you think of it from a linear perspective, so the book's written, and obviously there's a whole learning process that goes on around the burden that is on you and your co-author to make that book a success. So that you have a lovely publisher, but the book is far more important to you than them, I would argue.
Right. So that's where, again, with advice, we reached out to publicist and social media partner and thought leadership partner. I'm not going to name names, but he's on the phone with me right now.
Lucky you.
And and work with them. Again, tapping into their expertise, and we keep pleading with them because we're still in this process to just make sure they're telling us what we need to do because we know we can do it well, but we don't know what the doing is until someone tells us we need to. So, I've been a little more active, for example, on social media than David has been, but I know nothing about Twitter. I have resisted forever getting involved in tweeting or following people. I get enough of it in the
Yeah,
news.
right.
So that's something we now find ourselves needing to do. So I've got to understand that quickly, and again, leaning on experts to get us set up and get us going and finding our voice in that particular platform. In terms of platforms in general, I find that the way to start is to start. A few years back, I kind of felt like I was being left behind on Facebook and blogging and everything else. So one day I just asked somebody I knew who was blogging, and they gave me the means to blog. They told me where to go to set up an account, and I just started writing. And the transformation for me personally, in terms of day one trying to write something down to 2 years later being able to sit down and pound out something that was truly my voice and sincerely what I wanted to say. I got there because I was practicing and I was finding that voice. It just wasn't there at the beginning.
Yep.
And I think that goes for anything. But in the case of writing and learning this, David and I have just had the attitude all the way through. Let's just make it happen. Let's just do it, and we'll sense our way through it.
So let me ask you this, and you've got, and I would say David as well has. You have a learner's mindset, right? So when you're a consultant, you're constantly in a position where your clients are paying you what they're paying you for the right answer. They don't want to hear we don't know, it may be whatever, inside of the domain by which you're hired, right? You're the expert, etc. So you're now in a position where you're going to other professionals and saying, "Listen, we don't know anything about social media. We don't know anything about book PR. We don't know anything about building a platform. You tell us." Is it how natural, unnatural, uncomfortable is that for you? Because I think it's the right approach, but I think way too many smart people, they're just not, comfortable being in that sort of learner's mindset, that beginner's mindset.
I would stress the word humility as something that we've really embraced, and not just in writing the book, but our business and what we ask of our clients is some genuine humility, believing that you don't know what you don't know. In the case of the content of our book and the formula we talk about, it's about sort of recognizing that when you're dealing with something big and complex, you don't see it all and you can't see it all, and you need to bring people in who see things you don't. And your opinion is not the right opinion because you have a lack of data and information to draw from. And so that humility and our humility as people who help our clients through this formula, and not putting ourselves front and center and not pretending we know what they're solving for. One of our selling points, with new customers is that we know nothing about your industry, or we know very little about your industry. The point is that you and your people know everything you need to know, augmented with whatever outside help you need. But we do not, we find it very natural to walk around, embracing what we don't know and knowing that there are people who know it better.
That's great. As we start to wrap up a little bit here, give me maybe, two or three things that have been surprising to you that you've learned along the way, and two or three things that you're really excited about as you continue down this path.
I think there is a tendency to want to go fast and act fast and get to action. And there's always been this chestnut that you're supposed to go slow to go fast. What I've come to realize very much is that shared understanding has to precede action when you're doing something that extends beyond yourself. So at any point in time when you're trying to get anything done, whether it's writing a book, whether it's solving a problem, whether it's raising your kids, shared understanding has to precede action, because that is the missing ingredient that stands in the way of executing, implementing, doing in a way that is aligned, and with intent. And if I used to watch my father and his business partner. They were part of my early career experiences, and I'd see them have lengthy discussions, and I'd know that they were talking about two different things, but thinking they were talking about the same thing. And so I think I had that pounded into me early on, the value of reaching shared understanding first. So as we go out there and start to speak, as we go out there and try to tell our story, as we told our story in the book, we were chomping at the bit to get to the good stuff, but we really had to take our time to lay the foundation on the what before we could get to the how. So again, I don't think it's particularly surprising. I think I knew it already, but just how valuable it is to reach shared understanding. And by the way, I have three daughters. Understanding the importance of shared understanding before making demands, that again has been a learning experience as you raise your kids.
And I think the counterintuitive part of that is, you've got to go slow when you want to go fast, right?
Right, exactly. So we talk about going fast at going slow to go fast. Because you still have to go slow to go fast. But what you don't have to do is take 6 months or a year to build shared understanding. And that's kind of the promise of the formula we're bringing to market.
Well, this is great. Well, I appreciate all your time and sharing, sort of sharing where you are to date and the journey and the decisions you've made and how you've gone about it. But I think you've partnered with some good folks, made some good decisions, and I think you've got realistic expectations in terms of both the process, if you will, of becoming an author and thought leader, and the work and energy and thoughtfulness that it takes. It's not just the random act of a book comes out in such and such a date, and then the sun, the moon, and the stars appear, and fame and fortune fall at your feet. I appreciate your transparency with us today, David.
Thank you. And again, thanks for having me on.
Great, my pleasure. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.